Hey viewers, I had a viewer ask me today about how to replace the shift cables on a bike with friction shifters. So I'm going to show you how to do it. I'm going to start off by cutting the cables because we're not going to need these old cables. And you can see this one's kind of rusty there. That's why I'm going to replace these anyway. Okay, so now we're going to push the cables out of the shifters. Just kind of push the cable up from the back like this, and they should just slide right out. Now occasionally the head of the cable will get stuck, like seized in the shifter itself, and you try to push it, it just won't come out. What I kind of recommend, try to get some penetrating oil in there, that might help, but then take like a dental tool with just a straight point on it, and you can push it in through the back, and then a lot of times at that point you can push the head of the cable out like that. Next, I'm going to loosen the cable clamp on the rear derailleur here. On this one, it's a little hex fitting. On other ones, it might be like a little nut. And so I'm just going to loosen that and then get the cable and pull this through out like this. And so now I'm going to pull out this bit of cable housing. I'm going to cut another piece of cable housing. Now on modern bikes with index shifting, the shift cable housing is stranded. So there's long strands that go the length of the cable housing, and so that gives minimal compression for the housing, and that gives you the precision of the shifting that you need for index shifters and derailleurs. But on older bikes that had the friction shifters, that precision was not necessary. In fact, you actually wanted strength. So the cable housings were spiraled the same as brake cable housings. And in fact, the brake cable housings and shift cable housings were generally interchangeable. So for that reason, I'm going to use a piece of brake cable housing to replace this. So I've got my cable housing here, and I'll just line this up here side by side, go down here, and just cut this right here like that, and then just clean up the cut a little bit like that, and make sure that that's clean on both sides. And then I can use an awl, like a little scribe here, and if I poke this down in here, it'll open up the lining in the cable housing there. So just poke it over here, and that allows the cable to smoothly go in through the ends here where I cut. And then I can slide a ferrule onto each end of the cable housing like this, and just put this down here for right now. Okay, so now I'm ready to install my shift cable, my new one. So I'm going to slide this in through the shifter like this and push it down through the bottom. If the shifter has like a little like kind of cage, kind of like this, you want to make sure it goes inside this cage and not over it, because if it's going to go over it, it's going to drag it, and that's not going to be good. So I'm going to pull the cable all the way through until the end of the cable is fully seated down into the shifter like that. And so now I'm going to run the cable down here through a guide down by the bottom bracket. And on this bike, the guide is on top of the bottom bracket. On many of them, it's on the bottom side of the bottom bracket. So I'm just going to go ahead and pull the cable in through like that. So now I'm going to slide this cable here through this cable stop on the chainstay, and then slide it into the cable housing like this and push it through till it comes out the other end, and then I'll pull it all the way through just like this. And so now I'm going to take the cable, slide it into this barrel adjuster like this, and then I can slide it in through this cable clamp that I pulled the other cable out of, and pull this through. And I'm going to get the cable housing seated there and seated there, and then just kind of pull the cable taut, and then I'm just going to loosely tighten this at the moment. Now before I tighten down the cable, I want to make sure the shifter is pushed all the way forward, and I want to make sure that the chain is on the smallest cog on the cassette or freewheel. Now before I tighten this down here, one thing I like to do is tighten this barrel adjuster all the way in and then turn it out about one full turn. That'll give me a little bit of room for adjustment. That's not so critical on friction shifters, but like on index shifters, it definitely is. But it's still nice to have like a little bit room for adjustment here. So now what I'm gonna do is pull this cable tight and tighten down this little cable clamp down here, like that. Okay, so let's run this through the gears here. I'm gonna pedal and then shift up and shift down. I can shift part way like this, and that looks pretty good. If the chain isn't coming all the way down to the smallest cog there, then you might want to turn the barrel adjuster in. If it's coming off of there, then you might want to adjust the limiting screw for the high, and if it's falling off the other side, then you adjust the limiting screw for the low. But that's working perfectly. So now I'm going to trim this cable here, leave maybe about 1.5 inches on there, trim that off, and then I have like a little crimp end on here, and slide this onto the end of the cable like this, and then crimp it on, and this will keep the end of the cable from fraying or from poking anybody in the leg, like that. Okay, so I have the rear derailleur hooked up, and so now I want to hook up the front derailleur. So anyway, what I want to do is remove this old bit of cable here, and I'm going to loosen this little nut here, this little clamp nut, and then I can pull the old cable out through here like this. So now, just like on the other side, I have my new shift cable here. I have the shift lever pushed all the way forward, and I'm going to push the cable down through there. Again, I want to make sure that it goes to the inside of this little cage here and not over it. And so I'm going to pull the cable all the way down through until the head of the cable is fully seated in there like that. And again, I'm going to run this cable here through this guide. It's on top of the bottom bracket, where often they're on the bottom side of the bottom bracket. It'll go through there and then come up through this little triangle here. But on this one, it's on top. So I'll just go ahead and fit the cable into it just like that. Now I have the shifter pushed all the way forward, and I have the chain here on the smallest chain ring. And so I'm going to run the cable in here into this cable clamp, and it's going to clamp in the exact same way that the previous cable was clamped in there. There's like a little notch in there, so I'm going to run this cable in there through this notch here. I'm going to pull the cable tight and then tighten down this little clamp here, little clamp nut, like that. Okay, so now I can go ahead and test the shifting. I can shift it up and shift it back down. That looks pretty good. If it's rubbing, the cage is rubbing, then you can feather the shifter a little bit so that it doesn't rub. If there's an issue with the derailleur pushing the chain off of this way, or if coming off the other way, then you can play with the limiting screws to limit how far the cage can move in either direction. But this actually looks pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this cable. So I'm going to cut this off, leaving about 1.5 inches there, and put a little crimp end on there like this, and then crimp that into place so the cable doesn't fray or poke anybody in the leg, like that. Okay, so now I have 2 brand new cables, and I have brand new housing back here, and the shifters and derailleurs are all adjusted, and that's how you do it. Let me know what you think down in the comments. Hopefully you found this video useful or interesting. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. If you're not subscribed to my channel, click the subscribe button, and be sure to click the little bell because then you get notified when I put out new videos. I'm over on Facebook, RJ the Bike Guy. Go over there, like that page. I post a lot of stuff over there. And I have a webpage, rjthebikeguy.com. Go check that out as well. Thank you very much for watching.